Hey, it's Dr. K. I'm a California licensed naturopathic doctor and certified sacred medicine woman. Welcome to the Divine Woman Wellness Podcast. This is a show about whole body wellness that is going to support you in finding alignment with your body, mind, and spirit. I believe every woman should have a deeper understanding of her body and soul, and my mission on this show is to guide you through learning about your body, how you can shift your day-to-day life to support health and wellness while connecting to yourself on a deeper level. These episodes are rooted in naturopathic medicine, vitalism, biohacking, and mysticism, and will guide you towards well-being in body, mind, and soul. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hi, my loves. Welcome back to episode 8 of the Divine Woman Wellness Podcast. Today, I thought I would do another episode that is just flowing from my heart and centered around a topic that I discuss with a lot of my patients and actually with a lot of my friends as well. So what I want to dive deeper on is actually the 80-20 rule. So I know 80-20 rule, we hear this a lot in healthcare. At least I think I hear it a lot in healthcare, and I definitely put that out a lot with my patients, in part because I think we've been conditioned so much to just feel the need to be perfect and to be 100% in. And yes, to some extent, if you're going to take care of your health, being 100% fully committed is really important, but also taking into consideration you are a real human and life comes up and we have to live in reality. And not to say that that's an excuse to let things slide or maybe, turn a blind eye to maybe something that we could be doing better, but rather to come from a place of love, grace, and compassion in regards to our health and our journey. So there are a lot of places that the 80-20 rule can apply. And for me, I generally try to apply the 80-20 rule in all parts of my life, whether that is in my emotional well-being, my physical health, my physiological health. I really try to take a balanced approach to what is the goal that I'm trying to achieve and how do I achieve it while maintaining sanity. And I talk to a lot of my patients about it, whether it comes to supplementation, dietary approaches, or whether it's actually implementing lifestyle approaches. And I think when we can take a step back and we can come from a place of love and compassion and imperfection and truly embrace that, it becomes easier to make the better for us choices more often as a whole when we release the pressure and we allow ourselves to be more in the flow of life and whatever happens. So in a dietary approach, there are some times where we say it is an all or nothing. So, for instance, an elimination diet, or if I'm asking somebody to go gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, to eliminate certain foods to achieve a goal of allowing the body to reset, there are times where there has to be 100% commitment, especially with certain foods. As soon as the body sees it, it triggers the inflammatory process, and then it gives us a setback in terms of the healing approach, and we really need to then restart the clock. So there are times where it's 100% approach is important, but most of the time we can look at it as an 80-20. So that is really any dietary approach, any lifestyle approach we can apply this rule to. So just like supplements, let's start there. Let's start talking about supplements. I always tell my patients they work better when you take them than when you don't. And again, there are very few supplements that are really super rigid on how to take them. Let's pick on vitamin D. Sunshine vitamin D, that one is best taken in the early morning, at least sometime before lunch, with a fatty meal. It works best at that time. If you forget to take it with breakfast, take it with lunch. If you forget to take it with lunch and it's still early afternoon before 3, maybe you can take it. For some people, because it does produce energy, it actually gives them a boost of energy, which is lovely, but then unfortunately it does interfere with their sleep. if taken in the earlier morning hours, it can improve sleep because you're appropriating energy in the correct time of day. Now, again, ideally it's taken with a fatty meal, and the premise behind that is so that it is a fat and fats absorb better together. So if you eat a fatty meal, it causes the gallbladder to contract and to release bile. The bile then emulsifies the fats and then brings in the fats with the fat soluble vitamins. So that is the ideal time to take it. However, if you keep forgetting and you can't remember to take it with your meal, and the only time you remember to take it is, say, first thing in the morning when you wake up because it's by your toothbrush, it's still going to work infinitely better when you take it away from food than it would if you wouldn't take it at all. So, taking a realistic approach in this case, I think, is really important. Same with your multivitamins. Now, some multivitamins can be really hard on the stomach, especially if they contain zinc and B vitamins. Those generally we do want to take with the meal. Again, breakfast is ideal, lunch is second best. They work better when you take them than not. Some people have more hearty digestion and they don't actually notice when they take a multivitamin and they're fine with it. Those are the people that can take it at any point in time. But definitely a little bit of caution. If you experience nausea after taking it, definitely go eat something. And that should relieve it. And that's just because the zinc and the B vitamins can be really hard on the system. Binders. So, detoxes. I do a lot of detoxes with my patients because I see a lot of environmental toxicants, including mold illness, but also just your standard run of the mill glyphosate, BPA, other environmental toxicants. So, there's a lot of detoxing that we do in my office. And detoxing, yes, you want to be mindful about the approach that you're taking, and it works better when you're doing it than not. But even with that, a lot of the protocols I use, they're 5 days on, 2 days off, which is a nice cadence. But if you're traveling, or if you have an event coming up, or you're not feeling well, or you're just having a day of aversion, taking the day off from doing the detox and listening to your body, I think is a really important point to remember, so that we don't push our bodies into overdrive. And it's okay to take a week off, to take 2 weeks off. Time is not truly running away from you. Your body is always detoxing. It's just how hard are we pushing? So 80-20 rule here, getting most of the supplements in most of the time. Now, when it comes to dietary approaches, there are, again, important times to be really fully adherent to a dietary recommendation. But if I have a patient who is, say, doing keto, and they've been doing keto for a really long time, maybe there comes a point in time where we can open the doors and say, okay, maybe we're keto flex, and most of the time we're keto, and other times we're still mindful of our carb consumption, but we're starting to bring some in and allowing a little bit more for that metabolic adaptivity and allowing for flexibility within the system. And I definitely have had patients where when they're eating keto, they feel fabulous. And as soon as they bring in carbs or high fiber foods, their stomach starts feeling off. And honestly, if you get stuck in a keto scenario, I want to highlight there might be something else going on, maybe even in the microbiome, that's preventing you from expanding out of keto, because we can be keto adapted, but that might not be a place evolutionarily where our body was happiest at or most well balanced, right? We want to be in this, we want to have good flexibility, especially in our dietary intake. And so if you're stuck in this keto rhythm where the only time that your body feels well is if you're keto or keto carnivore and you can't introduce any plant materials, there may actually be some organisms, microbes in your GI tract that are preventing you from expanding out. And we do need to make sure we get all the micronutrients. Now, if that doesn't hold true for you and you're being keto because you love the way you feel on keto and it's delicious and this is making you happy, and you can go out with your friends and have a beautiful dinner that might not be fully keto and still feel fine, I invite you to expand into that 80-20 rule, where most of the time you are following a keto carnivore, or whatever dietary approach you are choosing for yourself, but then allowing that flexibility for your body to have a little bit of a challenge, but also some diversity, micronutrients, and just relax into the fact that you don't have to manage your macros in order to achieve health. Now, other places an 80/20 rule can come into play is in our personal life. So for me, I have my non negotiables. And even within that, even though they're non negotiables, there are negotiables. So if I'm out camping, if my best friend is visiting, if I'm at an event, or if something comes up, honestly, I still have the few things that I do and aim to do, but I allow myself a lot more flexibility if they don't actually happen. So, my absolute non negotiable is my meditation at least once a day. That is my anchor, and I really do feel best if I'm able to achieve that. I think next, and just because maybe this is the order in which I do them in throughout the day, is journaling. I love my journaling. It allows me such a beautiful space to process and to emote, to just be and see what comes to mind. And I know I do better if I get my journaling time in. However, again, if I'm out camping, if I'm with friends, if there are events, if it's a little busier time of life, maybe I'll cut my journaling a little shorter than I normally would, or maybe I'll forgo it for the day. And even though I know it has an impact on me that day, I have to make that choice. Is it worth it for me to either do it or not do it? And sometimes the stress of doing something that's good for you is actually more harmful than not having done it that day. So I always try to be mindful of that. And if it fits into my day, I will always do my journaling. But that is something on occasion where life has gotten too busy, or that day has gotten too busy, or it was not practical because I had friends staying over with me, or we had a very full day, or it was a holiday and my kids got up early, like Christmas, for instance. I can journal any time of the day. My kiddos are up early. I got my meditation in. Let's unwrap some presents, or a birthday. Those are some days where maybe I just let go of the journaling and I call that my 80/20 for the day, for that time, and that's okay, and just relax into it without becoming really hard on myself and saying, "Oh, I didn't journal and how dare I skip a day and I broke the routine," and all the negative talk that, we all can be so good about. Just letting that go and recognizing that, yes, I understand it impacts my day to day, and I've made choices because whatever's going on right now is a higher priority. Movement, most days, if we can get in our 10,000 steps, if we can get in a little bit of an exercise routine, that's ideal. And if we can do it every day, that may be fabulous. And that might be too much for some people. So just weighing in, again, if you're starting to feel like you're coming down with something, pushing through and accomplishing the 100% of your workout goal, that might not be the right approach. Maybe that's one of those days where 80% is enough, or maybe even we take the day off and say, today is a rest day for me because I am recognizing that my body has different needs today. And even in parenting, an 80/20 approach is important. I think, especially, and maybe this is a really good topic to get into, especially as a naturopathic doctor who works with patients who've been chronically ill, and I discuss the importance of a clean diet, regular eat sleep cycle, avoidance of screen time, blue light filters, and obviously living a healthy lifestyle. I have two younger kiddos and they live in a modern world, and we have to figure out how to make it work. So at what point in time do I become the dictator and say this is how it's going to be? Or alternatively, do we have a joint approach where I educate them and they understand to the best of their abilities the consequences of the actions they are taking? And if they truly want to experience something, then maybe that's okay. Maybe they want to stay up late on a weekend and I communicate, hey, my boundary is I'm going to bed on time because I know I feel much better. I'm a better person tomorrow. I feel more balanced. I just feel healthier overall. That's fine. If you want to stay up, that's fine. Please don't wake me up. Stay in your room. You get to stay up. That is a choice you're making, especially as you're getting older. The only way we're going to learn boundaries about our bodies is if we get to push them and we get to experience the pros and cons. And when kiddos are young and it's a safe environment, that's the right time for them to experience it. I don't want them to grow up and move out and be 18 and suddenly be in a rebel mode where mom always had us be in bed by a certain amount of time and follow these very strict rules, so now I'm going to break them all. I think that's a much more scary future reality for my children. And so back to the parenting approach, yes, would I love them to eat completely organic, well balanced meals, avoid food coloring, high fructose corn syrup, junk food? Yes, I would really, really like that. However, I also recognize, again, they live in a modern world. Their friends are going to have some of these items. They see it, it's marketed to kids. And so we just have that conversation around it. Food coloring is very unhelpful to health. It's actually very harmful for health. And I don't use fear tactics, but at the same time, I think it's important to understand the consequences of what you're doing. And I'm so proud of my daughter. I mean, she's 11, and we have those conversations. At least my eldest is 11, my younger one is 8. And her and I have great conversations around it too. And sometimes both of them are very much in a place where, you know what, mom, right now it's worth it. I really want to experience it. And so we say, okay. And sometimes I say, that's fine. If you want to use your allowance to purchase an item, that's fine. It's not on or it's not an item that I feel comfortable purchasing because I vote with my dollars. I vote with what I purchase. And if I'm not choosing to vote for a certain business, that is my choice. But if you choose to work for your money, your allowance, and you want to spend it on something, that's up to you. And so I try to instill in them at an early age the importance of discernment and really taking a look at the bigger picture, not just our own health, but the environment as well. So there's a lot of places where parenting where the 80-20 rule can apply, and parenting is one of them. And I do know that making sure they have a set container and rules is very important because it gives them stability. They're also practicing right now, especially in the tween and teen years, their kids are practicing how to become an adult. And so we have to loosen up the reins a little bit. And the more information we can give our kiddos, I think the more easy it is for them to try to figure out what works in their life and what's healthy, what's good, and what doesn't work for them. So now that I work with a lot of adult patients, we focus on the 80-20 rule around, what can I put in my system? I work with a lot of patients that are very much in the all or nothing, like everything has to be organic. I have to make all my own food. And there are times where that's absolutely necessary because we're in a highly inflamed state. And then there's other times where we just got so used to having to do it that we've lost that flexibility or we've developed fear, especially around eating out. And I think there's a couple of things to take into consideration when we eat out. It's really important to use your words. So if there are foods that you're avoiding for health reasons, gluten or dairy being a common one, making sure you communicate that to your wait staff and just let them know, hey, I have a gluten allergy or I'm celiac if that pertains to you, or I have a significant dairy intolerance, and just asking, what are my options? What would you recommend? Or can the chef make something that fits within my dietary needs? And just use your words. A lot of restaurants nowadays are very accommodating. They even have separate menus for certain dietary restrictions. And even the wait staff is just extraordinarily knowledgeable. And if they don't know, a lot of times I'll go ask. So use your words. But I really try to encourage my patients who've thought that they just can't eat out, or that is limiting their social life when they're on a dietary protocol. Just use your words. It's not actually that hard. It just takes a little bit of confidence and pushing your comfort zone. And so this is where the 80-20 rule comes in. So maybe the food choices won't be organic, but you can still avoid the main inflammatory foods for you, and you still get to enjoy. It's kind of like you can have your cake and eat it too, right? You still get to enjoy the social time with your friends. I mean, even last night, so I'm celiac, for those of you that didn't know, and I'm pretty open about that. I go eat out all the time. Not like all the time, not every day. 80-20 rule kind of all the time. But I went out last night with some of my friends, and it was a restaurant I hadn't been at before. And I actually just used my words and said, hey, I'm celiac. I want to make sure that there's no gluten in the food. Do you have anything you can recommend that's either already gluten-free or that can be modified to be gluten-free? And suddenly there were so many choices, I couldn't even figure out what I wanted to eat. So it made it very safe. And sometimes, depending on the restaurant, I will take some enzymes that help me digest gluten just in case there's any cross contamination. But that being said, is I eat out often enough to know that if I use my words and I use them wisely, that my dietary needs can be accommodated. And I've driven across country being gluten free, and it's never been an issue. I've always been able to figure out a way to accommodate it. Now, sometimes that ends up in a salad with some protein on top. That's fine. Or a burger patty that's wrapped in lettuce. That's fine, right? 80/20 rule. Is it a perfect meal? Is it perfectly balanced? No. Did it give my body nutrients? Was it within my dietary restrictions? Yes. Are those the things that really matter? Yes. So we live life, we make it work. I always like to say there's nowhere I can go where I can't find something to eat. I'm pretty sure I could figure it out with a few, conversations, maybe some thought processes. Now, I am quite familiar in the kitchen, so maybe that helps me a little bit. But it's really, we only constrain ourselves as much as we want to at times. And again, I say that I have driven cross country, and yes, I've packed some of my own food to make it easier for me, but I was still able to stop at restaurants and find something to eat. It just might be a little bit, yes, it might be not the most favorite thing you would want to eat, but there's something you can eat and it is still enjoyable. So again, 80/20 rule, what are the most important things? And another way I like to look at it is what really moves the needle forward. So the choices that I'm making right now in terms of an 80/20, is that going to either cause a setback, or is that within the premises that's still moving me in the right direction, but allows me to play and have that flexibility that I need? Now, when it comes to things like toxicant exposure, yes, the closer we are to 100%, the more ideal. That being said, we live in a pretty toxic world, and it is really disheartening that I've definitely had patients that are eating completely organic, wearing cotton clothing, organic cotton clothing, that being said, and there's still glyphosate in their system. There's still BPA in high amounts. There's still other environmental toxicants, including metals and sometimes molds, but even plasticizers that are in their system. And we do live in a quite toxic world. So if we can try to avoid it as best we can, that's great. But again, at what point in time is the stress level more toxic or as toxic as the toxicant itself? So it's something I invite you to look into. So, at home, I have an amazing water filter. I would never drink tap water. However, again, when I go to restaurants, sometimes I will ask for a bottled water. And if I'm really thirsty and they put a glass of probably tap water in front of me, will I drink it? Yeah, sometimes I send it back because I have a very particular palate and I do feel like I can taste when it's really not right. So yes, tap water in most places we definitely want to avoid as much as possible. At restaurants, you can ask for bottled water. When you go out to eat, just enjoy the meal, even if it's not organic. Yes, if we can find a great organic local farm to table kind of restaurant, that would be amazing. So farm to table experiences are the best, especially if they're organic. That's not always possible. And sometimes we just want to go out on a date. We want to go out with our friends. We want to enjoy. Great, go do that. Enjoy the moment. Don't worry about the small amount of toxins that might be coming into your system. That's why there are binders. We should probably all be detoxing on a relatively quarterly basis. There should be some sort of ongoing detox support within the body so that when we have these exposures, which really we have all day, every day, our body is able to handle that and it doesn't get built up. It's when we don't take care of the foundations and we're not detoxing, we're not eliminating, that's when things get built up and then we end up with problems. So we're doing the best we can. And I think that's my message here with the 80/20 rule, is really just do the best you can. And when the stress about doing something that's healthy for you is getting to a point where it's too high, the stress itself might be more problematic than what you're trying to avoid. So again, if on average your dietary protocol says you should be dairy free, even if you're lactose intolerant, this message is not for you. Definitely avoid dairy because that's a problem. And for other people where it's just slightly inflammatory, maybe causes some GI discomfort, maybe we get a little bit of acne, if you're, say, at a wedding and they have some dessert that has dairy in it and you want to indulge, maybe that's the right time to indulge and say, okay, I'm taking some extra enzymes and I'm going to do a little bit of a detox, a cleanse, or maybe I don't even have much of a reaction because I've been taking really good care of myself. Maybe that's worth it. And that's the other thing, is when we're looking at the 80/20 rule, the choices that we're making, are they worth it? So if you're going out to drink every single night, or if you're going out to restaurants every single night, that's no longer the 80/20 rule. That's more like a, I don't know, what is it, like a 30% rule, 30/30, 70/30. We're starting to push the boundaries, is what I'm trying to say. And at that point in time, we're no longer focusing on a health goal, and we're starting to bring in habits that are not really moving the needle forward. So with an 80/20 approach, meaning most of the time, it's what we do most of the time that mostly matters. So if most of the time you're eating really clean, you're taking great care of yourself, you have a great foundations of health, regular eat sleep cycle, good nutrient intake, a nutrient dense dietary intake, you have a good balanced social life, that's great. And then 20% of the time, maybe you do the things that you normally wouldn't do, but they're enjoyable to you and you absolutely have the time of your life. And I think to miss out on those times, I think would be so sad in the pursuit of health. So but that's my approach, and that's generally what I try to talk to my patients about, is taking a realistic approach and making sure that we're not so all or nothing about a topic that it becomes toxic in very different ways. So for today, I would say let's wrap this episode, because I think we've talked about the 80/20 rule plenty now. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to DM me. If you are interested in working on a one-to-one basis with me, make sure you check out the show notes. There's a link so we can set up a 15-minute meet and greet where we can get to know each other and explore some of the ways for us to work together. If you are interested in my gut and hormone balancing course that's coming out, make sure you join the wait list. That's also down in the show notes. And if you love today's episode, make sure you go ahead and share it on social media. Go ahead and tag me at divine_woman_wellness. And I would absolutely love to see your shout outs on social media. Don't forget to rate and review here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And I look forward to recording the next episode for you. For today, I will let you all go. I hope you have an absolutely beautiful July day. Enjoy the sunshine, and so much love from myself to you, and have a beautiful day. Much love.